Good, beautiful day, my listener. Thanks for downloading the Uncensored Unprofessor. Thanks for wanting to take a few moments to turn on your brain. Up and down the city road, in and out the eagle. That's the way the money goes. Pop goes the weasel. Orange man wicked loves Hitler. Easy peasy weasel. Every vote for Donald Trump participates in evil. All around the ballot box, the elephant chased the people. The donkey thought 'twas all in jest. Pop goes the nation. Blonde hair bad and orange face goo. El Trumpo is a greasel. MAGA Nazis love their dad. Crash goes the easel. Why do I open an episode with songful gibberish? To make a point. Just like the lyrics of that 19th century British children's song, Pop Goes the Weasel, are almost entirely gibberish, so also is progressive rhetoric. The nonsense of Pop Goes the Weasel is echoed by today's seemingly ubiquitous progressive shrill shills. And not only is a good chunk of it just nonsense, a good chunk of it is projection. Yeah, a slab of it is psychological projection writ large. But wait, some intro first? Yeah, sure. Thanks for joining me. My name is Ed Rebarczyk. I'm the Uncensored Unprofessor. I have a PhD in the history of theology. I resigned 7 years ago as a fully tenured professor. I taught theology, church history, and philosophy across 25 years, 10 years adjunct, 15 years full-time at a seminary and 2 universities, all down in Southern California. My podcast is given to glorifying the eternal Trinity. The aim is to edify and encourage disciples, students of Jesus Christ, to not only embrace a Christian worldview, but to perceive reality through a Christian worldview. So, over the last 7 years, that's involved working through different theology topics, biblical studies, philosophical considerations, all of that, yes. But the show's taken on a rather natural response here in time, here in the craziness of early 21st century culture. It's taken on a rather natural response of reflection, reflecting on our nation and what's going on. Again, we not only look at Christ Jesus, we understand all of life through his identity, through the lenses he gave us, his Holy Spirit, wisdom, beauty, truth, reason, charity, love. Hey, I was just down in Tulare, down south of Fresno, California. What a rich time together. We were thinking about Romans 13, 1 through 7, where Paul tells us to obey the government. We did that in a 4-hour Saturday workshop, and it was just a blast. The folks there asked great questions. They thought carefully with me about our being believers in a post-Christian culture. Thank you again, Pastor Regan, for the invitation. My friend, are you interested? Pastor, are you interested in a Romans 13 workshop? Want your congregation to better understand a timely biblical passage? Email me at uncensoredunprofessor@gmail.com. So, am I blindly siding with the GOP over the Dems? No. Am I simply choosing any and every way to promote the orange Mussolini? No. That's not how I'm wired. But I will call out childish madness. The lady said it on The View. Voting for Trump is a descent into fascism. I will call out childish madness when I hear it. I will satirize hyperbolic mantras when I see them being propagandized. So, what's going on? Or better, what's at stake? What do I believe is at stake for America, or still more particularly for the church in America? Here, 5 days away from the election, the release date of Halloween 2024, 5 days away from the election, what's at stake? Well, the nation is on a precipice. A crossroads? Yeah, but it's edgier than that. It's dicier than that. It's more critical, alarming. We're not merely poised to go in one dramatic direction or the other, east or west. We are on the edge of collapse. We're looking into the abyss. Now, across the decades, and really it's been going on since Woodrow Wilson in World War I, and that was heightened by what FDR did for 15 to 16 years in and through the 1930s and 40s, across the decades, making the state grow ever larger and ever more grasping and reaching and grasping. All of that was amped up a little bit by Bill Clinton. But it was taken to blue-hot extremes by both the Obama and Biden administrations. America has, or better, babies have, or better, children have, or better, parents have, families, churches have, free speech has, freedom to think has been incrementally painted into a tiny little corner in the proverbial room. And now, with us standing in that little 2-inch by 2-inch square corner of the room, the progressives are poised to slam down their big hammer. That's not me being alarmist. That's me reading the signs of the times. That's not me being reactionary. That's me paying attention, eyes wide open. And yes, the progressives are projecting. Right before the election next week, they're worried that Trump, they're saying he's a closet Nazi. Cats and dogs went trick-or-treating with their Uncle Schmeagol. Every time they knocked on a door, smack goes the beagle. They're worried Trump might lock up his political enemies? Sheesh. Goodness wonder why. Oh yeah, because over the last 4 years they've not only tried through lawfare, they've tried how you say number us many times to lock Trump himself up. They have actually locked up several of their own political opponents. Steve Bannon got locked up for 4 months. He just got out last week. He wasn't even in D.C. He wasn't even in D.C. on January 6th. General Michael Flynn went to jail. Rudy Giuliani, they're hoping to throw him in ASAP. And then mercy, there were hundreds of conservatives, including grandmas, one here from Spudlandia. Hundreds who walked into, not defaced, not rioted, not looted, not arsoned, not graffitied. They walked into the Capitol building. What happened? Progressives locked them up for 4 years. I saw this one on Facebook. Thank you, Dawn. Karl Marx, the father of communism, said, "Accuse your enemy of what you're doing as you are doing it to create confusion." So yeah, progressives creating confusion and projecting and creating confusion and working projection, yeah. So, sorry, not sorry, was it okay for the Democrats to end the filibuster? A 60-vote minimum to pass something to end that filibuster in the Senate when that worked to their benefit? Harry Reid, 2013. But then, when Republicans appointed judges with simple majorities, it was a misuse of their power? Playing at the ice skating rink, Tony Stark was labeled. When he kneeled to pick up a tool, pop goes the weasel. Hey, it's weasel. And it's called splashback. And so, no, you don't get to have it both ways. But the progressives, they want it both ways. They do want to lock up Well, and silence the free speech of, and censure, and cancel, and fine their opponents, and imprison those they don't like. They do want to lock up their political opponents, but now they're out of their minds, terrified that the methods they have adopted could now splash back on them. It, it could happen now to them? Look, at first blush, it reveals a certain level of silliness, but worse, it goes to a broken perception of reality. When they believe that what is good for the goose is only good for the goose, we know there's something darker at work. But let me go back to my original concern. The nation is on a precipice. And we know it's on a precipice because we can feel it, right? I can't tell you how common it is for me to be in simple conversation and people, folks I don't even know, will go to the "it feels like we're on the verge of civil war" lines of conversation. Man, I was on a beach earlier this year, and a lady I don't know from the Seattle area, she plopped her lawn chair down next to me and hey, my listener, whoa. The beach was crowded. She plopped her lawn chair down next to me and we began chatting. And within 3 minutes, she, from Seattle, said to me, "I don't know how this is going to end without violence. I think we're headed toward civil war. That was a stranger talking openly like that. Why?" Because America is on a precipice. More and more people are prepping. What used to be a Mormon thing, what used to be a Ted Kaczynski marginal thing reserved for tent-dwelling wackadoodles, prepping is now mainstream, common. It's big industry. And it's big industry because millions can sense we are on a tipping point, a national precipice. When high-blown journalists and pedantic journals are saying, "Hey, it's pretty clear that America's on a precipice," then we're on a precipice. When church leaders in America, Roman Catholic Archbishop Vigano, Greg Laurie, Jack Hibbs, Seth Gruber, Vodi Balcom, when they forcefully say we're on a precipice, then, folks, we're on a precipice. So happily do I promote Gallerini Roofing. If you live in the OC or SoCal, give Gallerini Roofing a call, 714-244-6567. That's 714-244-6567. They are an experienced, licensed, bonded roofing company. Take action now before the deluge hits. Take action with a roofing company that performs their work in a professional manner. Commercial, residential, new work or repairs, Gallerini is your go-to for all your roofing needs. And when you call, tell them the UU sent you. Again, we stand on a precipice. We know, my listener, and you and I know because we've read our history. We know that when a nation threatens to shut down the church, that grave evil lurks just outside the door. It's happening straight up in Canadian Leafland up there. Hundreds of churches have been shut down for teaching a biblical position on human nature, that is, on human sexuality. Shut them down. Biblical literature, biblical framing is deemed hateful and wicked up in Canada land. And so, those biblically faithful churches, progressive sentiment insists they should be silenced. Punish and close those biblically faithful churches. Oh, I've said it for years, even before Obergefell. The church and progressive attitudes about sexuality are on a massive tectonic plate collision course. The days of live and let live are sadly long gone. When you threaten, Shnikes, no, it's not a threat. It's a stated political platform talking point. When you say you're going to require that information you don't like, let's call it disinformation. When you say you're going to require that information you don't like be run through a governmental bureaucratic agency, when you say that free speech and public information you do not like should be, by power of the federal government, be shut down, you're on the edge of a precipice. An uber tall ledge. Half a pound of jasmine rice, half a pound of needles, mix 'em up and make it slice, flop goes the weasel. And we know because that kind of governmental power play is always a precursor to full-blown tyranny when we look back across the 20th century history. We're on a precipice. We're on the verge of losing our nation. Not just because progressives loathe the Constitution, a Constitution that slows governmental exercise of power, a Constitution that hinders the light-speed exercise of governmental coercion, a Constitution that puts checks and balances on the government, not on the people as citizens, but on the government itself. When they hate the Constitution, we're on a precipice because progressives no longer want any borders? Wait, what? They don't want any borders. No, they don't want national borders. Oh, this is a critical one, you guys. May I explain why borders are in fact necessary for the flourishing of the common good? It goes like this. In order to be hospitable to my Treasure Valley, also known as southwestern Idaho neighbors, I have to have a home. I can't invite her into my home unless I have a home. Hospitality requires space. Space requires boundaries. If I'm living in my car, I'm going to have a difficult time of showing Christian hospitality. Cars don't afford talking across a coffee table. Cars don't afford a space given to conversation and sharing. Cars can't have refrigerators and coffee makers in them. No, to be hospitable, I need a home. But to have a home means I need to have a roof and walls and a front door. And roofs and walls and doors are called boundaries. But hospitality, neighborly hospitality, that exchange cannot happen unless there are boundaries. I mean, I could open my home to every drug addict, every unwilling to work, every mentally ill person who lives on the street. I could open my home to them for free of charge. I really could do that. I mean, one could even do that out of a sense of Christian charity. But guess what? It wouldn't last long. It wouldn't be long until that space was trashed and garbaged and defaced and smoke saturated and soon thereafter soiled. Soiled until it was no longer a domicile. It would functionally be the street come into my home. And when the street is living in my home is no longer a home. Because the boundaries get erased. And they could be erased, yes, even for the sake of heartfelt Christian charity. But once those boundaries are erased, my home will no longer be a home, and then everyone loses. And then, lacking that warm space, that warm environ, my home will become the street. Now I say thank God for public streets, right? But public streets are not much conducive for hospitality. They're not structured for or given to hospitality. And so, it's the same with a country. Oh, America, just like every country on the planet, America cannot afford to feed every new immigrant. Well, if you follow the progressive MO, feed and educate and pay for infant births and pay for the medical bills of and pay for the apartments of and pay for the crimes committed by illegal immigrants. There's no way to be hospitable when the country has become a homeless encampment. And saying it all that way is to give the benefit of the doubt that the progressives only want to be hospitable, which they don't only. Josh and Emily open their door to welcome in their neighbors. When those neighbors strip their home bare, bam goes the weasel. Truth is, America is on a precipice. What is that precipice? What's on the verge of taking over? What's on the verge of being tumbled into? Tyranny. Yes, it's true. Progressive policies and progressive values, sexual grooming, strategic sexual confusion, abortion on demand, destroying the First Amendment, open borders, a justice of equity instead of blind justice, a cloward, driven inflation, hatred for God, hatred for the church, hatred for human dignity. It's true that progressive values and policies have the nation frenetically, like a herd of demon-possessed swine, racing headlong toward a certain drowning death in the sea. Those values and policies will destroy the nation. And in that seaward rush, they will pull the church into ruin too. Thank you, John Zmirak, for pulling up that biblical story, that biblical reference with regard to the American church being plunged into the sea. It would all be tyrannical. Amazingly, even with all of that and so much more at hand, with tyranny looming off the precipice, 150 stories below on the gum-strewn city street down there. Even with all that at hand, tens of millions of Christians plan not to vote in a few days. Why? I don't know exactly. Is it apathy? That certainly has to be in the mix. Human nature is apathetic. When we're given a binary choice between two very flawed candidates, it's easy to be apathetic, yes, but is it more? I don't know. Is it a principled biblical non-engagement? Are 10 millions of believers saying to themselves, Jesus was apolitical, therefore so shall I be? Is that what it is? Me? I don't think so. I might have a shtickle of respect for a principled, well-thought-through, biblically grounded of disengagement, but given, again, as Barna polling reports, that only some 9% of evangelicals, and surely Roman Catholics with them, only 9% have a biblical worldview, I don't believe I'm not going to vote. I don't believe their position is biblically principled. I don't believe the percentage of non-engagement is even 5% principled. I believe it's tinier than that. So, what then? Is it a neo-reformed, oh well, God is in control anyway? Is it that kind of posture? I mean, it sure could be. There's enough of that bad, though frankly for most it's really just lazy because they haven't even thought it through as carefully as the Reformed do in their position. There's enough of that bad theology around to account for all manner of Christian non-salty, Christian not gonna shine my light kind of posturing. But just knowing that some 30 million self-identifying Christians will not be voting, it's a kick in my stomach. It's a dereliction of missional duty en masse. Dancing past the ballot box, the Christians played the fiddle. When the delirious music stopped, he threw them on the griddle. Here's what the courageous Archbishop Vigano said. He is an Italian. He was the Vatican's diplomat to the United States for 5 years. Very aware of American culture and the American trajectory, he recently wrote in his open letter to American Catholics, but I believe it applies to all American Christians. Here's what he said, quote, "Even in conditions of relative normality, the exercise of the vote is your moral duty, through which you cooperate in the first person in choosing the person who will lead the nation for the next 4 years. But in this coming electoral round, just as in 2020, and indeed much more so, you are not simply called to choose between two candidates who happen to be on different political sides, but who both nevertheless have the common good at heart in compliance with the Constitution and the law. No. In this election, you must choose between two radically opposed ways of conceiving the government of your nation. You are called to choose between democracy and dictatorship, between freedom and slavery. On one side, we have candidate Donald J. Trump, who, despite serious problems in his positions, especially in the matter of abortion and assisted procreation, has as his objective the common good and the protection of the fundamental freedom of citizens. In Donald Trump's America, every Catholic can practice their faith and educate their children in it without interference from the state. On the other side, we have a candidate and a party that promotes everything that directly opposes the faith and morals of the Catholic Church. In Kamala Harris's America, Catholics, but also Protestants, are considered fundamentalists to be marginalized and eliminated, and their children are considered to be the property of the state, which arrogates to itself the right to lead them astray from an early age in both body and soul. Trump's America can become great and prosperous again. Harris' America is destined for invasion and for moral, social, and economic destruction. The most ferocious dictatorship. Close quote. And me, the you, I'm aware. I'm aware that some will listen to this and say, come on, Ed, you can't accuse the progressives of a desire for tyranny unless you admit that the GOP, and with them all the Christian nationalists, also want tyranny. Yeah, I'm aware of that kind of thinking. In a show last year about Israel and Hamas, I referred to that kind of reasoning as moral equivocation. And that is to pretend that both sides are equally bad, equally depraved, equally emptied of goodness. But it's a lie. To think in such moral equivocating ways is to give a pass to the wickedness that is openly parading in the public square. We have a presidential candidate, and many who support him, who still believe in the common good and common decency, the Constitution, religious liberty, the dignity of life, God, and reason. So, my final refrain today, please, Christians, you who love Jesus of Nazareth, the Lamb of God, the resurrected one, go out and vote based on biblical teachings, biblical commitments, Christian sensibilities. Go vote pro-life, pro-liberty, pro-limited government, pro-family, pro-male and female and babies. Please, I pray, vote those biblical values. And let's vote before we finally step over a national precipice. Halloween is a mixed bag filled with tricksy tricksters. Christians hide their light in a jar. Wham goes the country. Hey, thanks for listening today. For your information, next week's show will not come out on Wednesday. The election is Tuesday, and I'm going to want time to reflect on the election results, and I actually don't believe we're going to know come Wednesday morning, so I'll release the next show in due time. Until then, thank you for joining me. Please go and turn on your beautiful God-given brains.